Hey guys, so here on our homestead, with all the things that we try to grow and cook in our kitchen, one of the big things that we try to do is not just cook from scratch, but to really try to incorporate as many nutrient-dense, nutritious foods as we can. And so lately, this has led me on a deep dive to using buckwheat flour. So let's talk about all the benefits that buckwheat flour offers, how you can cook with it, and we're gonna make some delicious gluten-free, grain-free buckwheat muffins. So it's only been since the last couple years that I'd even ever heard of buckwheat flour, and I just always assumed it was another grain related to wheat flour, but actually it's something totally different. So buckwheat flour isn't even a grain at all. It's not related to wheat at all. It's actually more closely related to wild rhubarb, so it's considered almost more like a fruit than it is a grain. And so that's really interesting, right? So along with that, it has a lot of added health benefits. So honestly, we've never grown buckwheat, although I'm interested in trying. We've only ever purchased it as a flour. And so when you purchase it as a flour, it comes from the groat, which is then milled down into a flour. And so when they do this, there's a black hull. So they can either mill it with the hull, which is gonna give it extra fiber, some extra nutrients, and then you're gonna see the little black flecks in your buckwheat flour, or they can dehull it, remove that blackness, and then it's gonna be more of a pure white buckwheat flour. So we always try to get with the hull on for the extra nutrition and fiber, but that's why you're gonna get kind of this white with black flecks flour. That's what buckwheat flour looks like. But when you're cooking with buckwheat flour, the cool thing about it is because it's not actually a grain, it has more nutrients. And so one of the benefits of buckwheat flour is that it's high in minerals and antioxidants. And the cool thing is, unlike grains and seeds, they tend to have a lot of phytic acid that blocks the absorption of those nutrients in our bodies, which is why people do things like sourdough, fermenting, soaking of those grains and seeds. That's to get rid of that phytic acid to make those grains and seeds more digestible. But with buckwheat flour, it has a really low amount of those phytic acids because it's not actually a grain or seed, making it much more digestible and making it much more easy for your body to actually absorb all the good nutrients that are in it. So buckwheat flour is high, like I said, high in minerals, high in antioxidants, high in polyphenols. It's just a good, nutritious alternative to cooking with a gluten or grain flour, while still giving you the delicious kind of baked good texture, but with something totally different. So that's really fun about it. So there are two different types of buckwheat flour. You're gonna have your common buckwheat flour and then Tartare buckwheat flour. And so Tartare buckwheat flour is just way higher in nutrients than your common buckwheat flour is gonna be. They're both good, but Tartare buckwheat flour kind of blows common buckwheat flour out of the water when it comes to the nutrients that it has. However, you're gonna pay a more premium price to find Tartare buckwheat flour. There's only one source of Tartare buckwheat flour that's grown here in the United States that I'm aware of, and it's this big, bold health brand of buckwheat flour. And so we actually got some as a gift recently, but it's quite expensive to purchase on your own, but it's really, really healthful. And then much more easy for us to get is common buckwheat flour, which we get from a local mill here called Janie's Mill, but that's also really, really good. So there's kind of some options there if you do some searching around, but that's the difference. And with the Himalayan Tartari buckwheat flour, it's grown in really cold climates, which helps give the plant more resilience, leading to more nutrition in the flour. So just some interesting things about Tartare buckwheat flour and buckwheat flour in general. And the cool thing about buckwheat flour too, or growing buckwheat, is that it's really easy to grow in lots of different climates, lots of different, even hard to grow places. That's why it's so common around the world, because it's easy to grow in lots of hard to grow places organically, without spraying, without pesticides, whatever, just because it grows really easily. All right, so when it comes to cooking with buckwheat flour, it's used all over the world. So probably the most common application you'll see is to be used in pancakes, or what they call blinis in many parts of the world. Otherwise, in Japan, they use it for noodles. But today we're gonna make a buckwheat flour muffin. And so this is gonna be gluten-free, grain-free. So instead of usually buckwheat flour is combined with a wheat flour to kind of help give it that texture. But we're gonna go totally gluten-free, grain-free today, and so we're gonna do 1 cup of our buckwheat flour along with 1 cup of almond flour. So we're doing a totally grain-free option. I'll put the full recipe post below so that you have everything there you need, but this is a really easy, just 1 bowl, easy to make recipe. And so all we're gonna do is combine our 1 cup of, this is almond flour, and then I need to measure out here our buckwheat flour. So we're just gonna mix all of our dry ingredients together, add our wet ingredients, stir everything, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so then along with our buckwheat flour and our almond flour, I'm just gonna add a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, so then we're gonna mix this up. And then we're just gonna add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients, mix it all together. So we have 1/3 cup of coconut oil, melted, and 1/3 cup, this is maple syrup. You could also substitute honey here, but I like to use a natural sweetener. And then 1/3 cup of water. So this recipe is dairy-free as well. And then we're gonna add our 3 eggs. All right, and then we're gonna add blueberries to this. You can use fresh or frozen blueberries, or if you wanna add a different sort of berry, that's great too, or even chocolate chips or something like that. But we're just gonna do about 1 cup of frozen blueberries. Stir that in, and then we're gonna put that in our muffin cups about 2/3 full. Alright, so after you finish filling your muffin cups, you're gonna go ahead and stick them in your 350-degree oven for about 18 to 20 minutes, and then they are done. So a few little quick things about buckwheat flour and storing it. So I would store it, if you're gonna buy it, in the freezer to preserve the freshness, to preserve the nutrients of that buckwheat flour. And then these muffins are also really a great option to freeze. So they're perfect for quick on-the-go breakfasts or snacks. And so I like to do a big batch, even like a double or triple batch at a time, and then have them in the freezer for quick snacks or breakfast when you're on the go or got something going on. So that is how we have really enjoyed using buckwheat flour. But do you cook with buckwheat flour? Because I'd love to hear what your favorite recipes are and how you use it in your kitchen. So thanks so much for stopping by the farmstead today, and I'll see you next time.